The best way I can care for you is to care for myself. The best gift I can give you is the gift of my personal development. If I become 10 times wiser, 10 times stronger, 10 times more capable, think of what that will do for our friendship. The first self-interest is to survive. I do an interesting thing now on the instructions given to the first couple, Adam and Eve, after the garden experience. The instructions were, number one, multiply. It's a lonely world with two people. But the second instruction was interesting, and I try to find ways to translate it when I lecture in other countries. And it says to be fruitful, or productive. First, you need to produce enough to survive. If a man is by himself and he produces enough for himself, that's called self-care. Then, if he wants to live a higher life, a companion or get married, he now must produce enough for himself and his wife. Somebody says, well, why work that hard when you could just take care of yourself? But that's okay. This is not a moral question. This is a question of, do you wish to live a higher life, a better life? And almost everyone would agree that would be a better life, to be with somebody. But now comes the challenge now to produce enough for two instead of for one. Now they decide to have children. Now the man must figure out a way to produce enough for himself and his family, his children. And the question always is, why do that? Why not just take care of himself? And said, this is self-care. First to survive, then to live a better life. He pays that extra price of producing more than he needs for himself so that he can live a better life. Then the next challenge is that the end of it? And the answer is no. Why wouldn't the man think of ways now to produce more than he needs for himself and his family? And the question is, why work that hard? Why do that? And the answer is to be generous, which is an even higher life. Then I take it two more steps. Why not accept the challenge to produce much more than you need for yourself and for your family? Somebody says, well, that's ridiculous. Why do that? You don't understand. It's to live a higher life. Then I take it one step further, to produce far more than you need. What a way to live. Extraordinary. It's okay to live an ordinary life and a pretty good life, but how about an extraordinary life? To produce far more than you need for yourself and your children. Suppose you make $10 million a year and you and your family only need $3 million. Some families are more expensive than others, but let's say $3 million would pretty well cover most every family. Now you've got $7 million to give, to share. How about that kind of life? It's called extraordinary. To produce more and far more than you need for yourself. It's best to earn some of that early money in lifestyle. Go to the movies. Take 2 vacations instead of 1. Just some little extra things that now the family gets inspired by this new commitment to earning more and becoming more and making the studies and learning the skills and whatever you have to do. Now you make it more worthwhile for the family by thinking of lifestyle changes that now become very exciting. Go to the concert. My parents said, don't miss anything. Don't miss the play, the music, the songs, the performances, the movie, whatever's happening. At age 93, my father, before he died, if you would have called him at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, he wouldn't be home. He's at the rodeo, he's at church, he's at the play, the performance, he's watching the kids play softball at age 93. So he did it as well as taught it. Don't miss anything. So those changes in lifestyle. When I started making some extra money, I opened up an account for my wife, and I called it No Questions Asked account. And I said, here is the checkbook for a new account, and it's called No Questions Asked. I'll just keep putting money in there, and you spend it for whatever you wish. It was life-changing. It wasn't a fortune, but she didn't have to ask anymore for money, because I could sense that it was a little embarrassing at times when she had to ask me for money. I thought, well, that's not good. So the first time I get a chance, here's what I'm going to do. And sure enough, I did it. No Questions Asked account. You can't believe what that did. It was absolutely amazing. Anything you can think of that helps to change lifestyle is called making a living, but also making a life. Lifestyle, social friendships, church, community, country, all those things that make a composite of our overall life. You start furnishing that with new vigor, vitality, money, whatever it takes to expand your life into what I call the good life, as well as economics. It doesn't take a lot. How much is a movie, right? Even for a person of modest means, $6 or something. Costs $60 million to make it and only costs $6 to see it. Part of it's just simply priority. Less soft drinks, more movies. Everybody's got the money. The story I tell of the lady who invested the dollar, and now she's a millionaire. So she had the dollar. Depends on where you put it. Probably nothing more rewarding than conversation. Sometimes you need to be alone. For all of my busy life, from Milan to New York to Paris to Mexico City to the giant cities of the world, I do seek solitude, but only for short periods of time, not long periods of time. But it is important for me to get away, think and ponder and wonder about my life and what's happening, what's going on, where to go from here. But some of the greatest rewards are in personal conversation. I've got some close friends, some mentors that have been around for the last 50 years for me, that a couple of hours of conversation, you've got enough to feast on and live on for a while till you can have the next one. But it's easy to be a little too busy to go to lunch with a close friend and not miss it, or spend an evening with 2 or 3 families and enjoy life. How much is a concert? $25, $30, $40? So he says, well, poor people can't afford to go to a concert. It's only 8 Coca-Colas. It just depends. So you save up your soft drink money and you do some special things. So lifestyle to live well doesn't cost a fortune. All it costs is paying attention. Then the little dramas. I told a story about calling my father after my mother died. My father lived another 8 years, and he spent 1 more year out on the farm, which I still have up in Idaho, where I make a little wine and grow a few crops and live the good life overlooking the Snake River. But my father spent 1 more year the nights, and then he got a little lonely, and so I got him a place in this little farm village close by, so he could at least go there, spend the night, have breakfast, and then jump in his car and go back to the farm. And then there's a place close by called the Decoy Inn, little cafe, where my father most every morning would have breakfast with the farmers. So I'd call him while he's having breakfast. Just takes 10 minutes. Papa, I'm in Israel. And they'd bring him the phone, and we'd have this conversation. And he'd talk real loud so they could all hear the details. They gave me a reception last night on the rooftop. And he'd say, reception on the rooftop. Underneath the stars, Papa. He says, underneath the stars. So everybody gets in on this little conversation he's having with me. Now he's got a story to tell for the rest of the day. My son called me from Israel. I know he had to get up in the middle of the night. Makes a much more special day. Only takes 10 minutes. Easy to, easy not to. I'd send him these postcards from around the world, and he'd save them. Show them around. When I'd get back, some of them had a little butter and jelly on them, right, where he'd passed them around at breakfast. And then he'd get to retell the story. I was showing these postcards to my friends, and here's what happened, and here's what they said. And it keeps this lively interchange between father and son going. I took him back where he was born in my motorhome one year. Odessa, Washington. Went to the newspaper office, and he went back into the vaults in this little community, and he found some newspapers dated 1903, when my father was born. So we went through them. No record of his birth. I said, you were born out in the country, Papa. No record of your birth here. Like me, I was born at home. Then we went back to Wheeler, where he last went to school. When they had a place in town, they used to have a dry wheat farm, a couple of 1,000 acres in Moses Lake. But we went back to Wheeler, where he last went to school. He used to arrive early, before the teachers got there, and lit the fires in this old stove, 1 or 2 room school. And it was gone. Tried to locate the place where they might have lived and couldn't find it. It's probably gone. The only thing left in Wheeler was a church and a bar. And my dad says, well, that's a pretty good combination. Get messed up in one place and get straightened out in the other. I said, that's good, Papa. Everybody has a different temperament and personality, and it's something that has to be developed, over a period of time. If you're too shy, you should really learn to push that into a small corner and speak up more. If you're a little too loud, maybe you should, calm down just a little bit. But we shouldn't try to just radically become someone else. But that's what sophistication and civilization is supposed to do, is to make us civil. And to be civil in a civil society, we all must deal with that dark side of our nature, the positive side of our nature. And it isn't that it ever gets done or finished, but that we should suppress those things that would cause us trouble, not only within ourselves, but cause us trouble with someone else. It's a never-ending challenge, but to still always be who you are. But who we are is, you might describe it as dual nature. And the key to life is to become the most of the good in you and the least of the bad. So it's important also to see if you can't work on those things that, are not in your best interest, both in your thinking process and developing your plans for the future, or in your process of working with others, sitting at a conference table or being involved in an enterprise. That's a constant. When some become wealthy now, they have to deal with ego that didn't show its sort of ugly head until, the money was flowing like a river. And now this little gremlin on one shoulder whispers and says, now's the time, right, to, conquer the world and let everybody know you're the master. And sure enough, it can cause all kinds of problems. One of the greatest difficulties of wealth is, handling this issue of ego and keeping it under control. So we need to reveal who we are, but we also need to master the art of who we are presented as our best, as it serves us and our children, as it serves us and our friends, as it serves us in our business. But it is a constant and it never ends. But if we can make a personal appeal to ourselves, I want to constantly work on developing the positive side of my nature and do my best to suppress that darker side that would not allow me to be most of what I can possibly be. I think that's what's important. When a president becomes president, it's interesting, what ego might do. Old Testament says this king came to power and he was a good king. Then the next king came to power and he was a bad king. And that's always happening, whether it's good king, bad king, or whether it's inside of our own head. We all have to deal with that. But we might make this note. It's part of the great adventure. I think trying to find your passion is a little bit, maybe too strong a word. Greatly desiring to be extremely successful, I think probably is sufficient. But if you can find something you really love to do and can do it with great passion, I think that's fantastic. But I think being grateful probably is number one. If you've got a job, you got to be grateful. Say, this isn't the greatest job in the world, but even if it's a transitional job getting you where you want to go, you got to be grateful. You don't have to love your job or be passionate about your job, just passionate about staying steady, working hard, learning skills, doing this job so well that the next one will be even better, and taking such good care of this opportunity, another one will present itself. Sometimes the man says, well, if I had a good job, I'd really pour it on. But I've got this lousy job, so I just goof off. So that's not the attitude nor the philosophy. So if you'd really pour it on, this one, even though it may not be the best job in the world, if it furnishes a living, you have to be grateful. If it takes care of you and your family, You got to have gratitude, not necessarily passion, but gratitude. But I think if you have an extreme desire to wish to be successful, so you can accomplish all you wish to accomplish, be as generous as you'd like to be as strong as you'd like to be in terms of financial strength, involved in entrepreneurial projects that you can't do without, let's say, sizable money, so you go for that. To me, I think that's sufficient. I think if you say you have to find your passion, people find that a little bit confusing. Where would I find it, and what could I be passionate about? I guess you could start with saying, I'm passionate about providing unusual success for myself and for my family, so that my children will say in the years to come, we had the most incredible life together as a family. Then I think the key is to let what you want to accomplish, let that grow. Where at first this is as far as you can see, but if you'll do that, you can say, wow, maybe I could multiply by 2, by 3, and expand my vision, accomplish a lot more. If you have an enterprise, maybe you could make it stronger and better and more far-reaching. Let that happen. It's difficult to figure it all out and then get that done. We just don't do that. We can figure out the next little part of our life that we can see, and then we can say, well, eventually I'd like to have, and let those dreams linger somewhere in your consciousness. I say make a list of all the things that would give you the most incredible life. Just make that list. What would do it for you over the next 10, 20 years? Places to go, things to see, people to meet, books to read, skills to learn, investments to make, being generous. Just make lists of all the things that you think would make for you a really fantastic life. And at first, don't worry about how to get it. Just let your mind run free and think what would really do it for you. And then just begin. And let those lists alter. Because sometimes you start for something and then you say, sure enough, I thought this was really going to be everything I wanted. Sure enough, this is really not it. Or I can see now, long before you are going to accomplish it, I'm investing too much money and time and effort. So you change. And anytime you want, you can tear up your whole list and start all over again. Some people say, I made the list so I have to accomplish it. And the answer is no, you don't have to do it. It's your life. It's your list. You can turn it upside down, right side up, scratch off some things, put some new things on, or start all over again. Don't let it become an obsession. Let it become an enticement. Better to be enticed than obsessed, or we might invest too much effort and time in something that's not really going to turn out to be as great as we thought it would. The old prophet said, sometimes things that taste good in the mouth later turns bitter in the belly. We think, oh, this is it. Sure enough, it was a bit of an illusion. Don't cry for me, Argentina, right? One of the lines is, they are illusions. They're not the solutions they promise to be. But that's a learning experience. And we can only be affected by what we see. Someone says, well, you shouldn't have devoted so much of your time and energy. But if that's what you could see, only that at the moment, we're going to do it. And we just learn as we go. We need a collection of experience to give us good data on what to do, what not to do. Sometimes you need more experience to make a wiser decision. If a person says, well, I've eaten junk food now for a week, but look how strong and healthy I am. See, that's a delusion. 1 week is not going to give you the right kind of information about how you feel, whether it's a good idea to continue or not. You need a lot more experience than that to decide whether or not it's good for you. I used this illustration once with the candle lit, talking about having enough experience to make wise decisions. And I said, would all of you agree that the fire will burn my finger? Let's say that I don't know that, but you're trying to teach me now. If you put your finger in the flame, it will burn your finger. I say, okay, I'm ready to try it. So I put my finger in the flame and take it out, fairly quickly, in and out, right in the flame and out. And I say, look, my finger's okay. Let me try it again. And I put my finger in the flame and take it right out. And I said, my finger's okay. Where did you get this idea that the flame would burn my finger? And they say, no, Mr. Rohn, you can't just go like this really quick and put your finger and take it right out of the flame to know that the flame will burn your finger. You've got to leave your finger in there just a little longer. I say, oh yes, then I need a little more experience to make a wise decision. I say, well, I've taken this cocaine and I feel okay. But see, you don't know the end of that road. This is only the beginning when it seems to be okay. But you need more experience. Now, if you don't have any personal experience on cocaine, then you've got to go to someone who has and says, look, 20 years of my life was wasted, and I finally turned it around. Like some of the old rock and rollers that have turned it around. Amazing. I was in Paris the other day, had 20,000 in my class. Also in town were the Rolling Stones, who rolled into Paris and stopped for a while with Mick Jagger and all the rest. These guys got through those treacherous days of drugs and alcohol and somehow made it. A lot of them didn't make it. Boy George said, I woke up one day and all my friends were dead. That's enough experience.